Hey guys, video number 3 in the series of What Shall I Buy? And we have now come to the last 5 suggestions, and these are for those of you who maybe can consider yourself Cerwin-Vega pro, veterans, connoisseur, expert, you name it. You have had most of them. You have gone through D series, VS series, 12TR, LS, VS, RE, you name it. You even have had the 432R, 417R, 316. You have had it. You are the real deal, dude. Well, there are still some ways to go, and there's still models to search for. Even if you are the pro of the pro, the creme de la creme, the king of the mountain of Cerwin-Vega, there's still models you have never ever heard, and there's still models you have to have, or at least will be the next step up. So, without any further ado, let's just get into it. This list is made because of the complexity of it. It's like the next level. It's rare stuff. It's hard to find. When you put it together, it will be something you never had before. Okay, keep that in mind. So the first thing I want to start with is, and this can become kind of controversial. My first thing would be, if you've had it all, but this model is kind of hard to find now, 1215 MK1 or MK2. Doesn't matter. There are a little bit of differences in sound, a little bit of differences in looks. You have a European version, you have an American version. Doesn't matter which one you go for. Depends on where you live. Some European versions have been found its way to the United States and vice versa. 1215, first time I heard it was at Hi-Fi Club, and they had one pair left over after demo, and I have to say, it was such an enjoyment. We sat back, it was like a 3-seater there. I sat down and we just listened to a bunch of music, everything from Diana Krall to, classic metal, hard rock, Phil Collins, Eric Clapton. There was some Pink Floyd in there. There was what was the Norwegian singer that they played? Kari Bremnes, I think her name was. The Lillos. There was a bunch of music. We just sat there for hours and hours and just listened to these. And it was like, this was in the listening room, so it was kind of okay, but it wasn't like the greatest listening area. Because you had people walking around and talking, and even though it was kind of like shut off from it, the second time I heard it was a friend of mine. It was at a party, so it wasn't like the greatest, because you had like 40 people in there drunk, and how loud that becomes. But after everyone left, it was me and a couple of other guys. We just sat down there and unwinded because I couldn't drive home that day, so I had to spend the night. That was an experience. Maybe not the best one because I wasn't clearly thinking at that moment. But the best time I remember it, I borrowed the pair and I took it home, and I had them at home for a week, and I had the chance to sit down, kind of work with the placement on them, and play my type of music that I like, with the lighting that I like. Because when I listen to music, I like to dim the light down so my senses are mostly focused on sound, because that matters. If you have a very bright room and you use your eye senses, you kind of take away the experience from your ears. I can listen to music and find more details if it's dim or late at night or something like that. And even if it's sit in the dark and just look at the lights from the stereo. And I remember I was having them for a week, but he didn't want to sell them, but I so did want to buy them. But I had them for a week, and it was an experience. And I had them side by side, my AT15 at the moment, and D9, the D9E. and I did comparison between them, and it was like night or day. The 1215, if you haven't had them, but you had all the others and everything else, 1215, I think the ones I had, I think was MK. Was it MK1 or MK2? Now I don't remember. It was one of them. And I mean, if you haven't heard them, you gotta get them. They are amazing speakers. They're so roomy and so big and so it's like it's like a gust of wind that comes towards you. It just fills you in a very subtle way. I mean, voices. I remember the one listening that I did at the Hi-Fi Club, and the one that really stood out to me was a song with Kari Bremnes. I don't remember the song. I've been looking for that song ever since, and I can't find it. That really stood out. It gave me goosebumps, and the hair on my arms kind of stood up. And when I had him at home, I was playing a lot of different music, but I remember playing Uriah Heep with the title track from the Salisbury CD. And that song is like 16 minutes and 2 seconds long. And it's a progressive hard rock band. If you haven't heard Uriah Heep, you should really start listening to them because they're awesome. And this was when David Byron was the vocalist. And they use Hammond organs, they have guitars, there's drums, there's bass, there's like harmonies on the vocals. That song, it peeled me because I thought I knew the song, but it kind of peeled that song and peeled my listening experience like an onion. As each minute just passed away, I could hear new nuances. I could hear more details I haven't heard before on my ATs or my D9. So that was definitely a step up in the right direction. So if you want to go a step further than your original HEDs and hard rockers and receiver savers and big box speakers from Cerwin-Vega, 1215, MK1 or MK2. There you go. Now, the next one on the list that I have, and yes, I have made a list, is the NE10. I have heard this speaker one time in my life in Malmö, Sweden. There was a guy in Malmö, Sweden that I got hooked up with. He used to own a bar or a disco or pub or something. And he had these in the back room where he normally had, because he had a room where he had like troubadours or a solo artist, or he did acoustic things. And when there were no bands or artists in there, he just played music in there so people could sit there and smoke cigars and all kind of stuff. And he had a pair of NE10 in there, and that impressed me so much. I remember it was like, I didn't know it when I walked in there. And he said, just sit down here, I'll bring you a Coke or whatever you want. And I had a Coca-Cola, and I think I had something to eat. There were some sandwiches. And I sat there, and he said, would you want me to turn on some music? I said, oh, sure. And he just put on some background music, and I was sitting there, and I was like, he came back, and I said, this sounds really freaking good. And I looked at the big speakers, and this was before I even knew what the NE10 was, because it was that far back. I mean, I was young. I was in my 20s. And he said, yeah, they sound really good. I said, I've had them for 4 years now. And I'm like, shit. So I look at them, and they're huge. To begin with, I was like, are those JBLs? And he's like, no. He said, I got them from a guy in Denmark. He said, 3 or 4 years ago. He said, so I said, well, what is it? He said, it's Cerwin-Vega NET. And I'm like, what? Cerwin-Vega NET? And this is like way before internet and everything. I haven't seen them in the catalog or anything. Back then, I was kind of like familiar with, you know, the D series, and I think this was like 92 something. D series, 91 maybe, 90 or 91 maybe. And I was just, you know, the D series, the 8010, and I had some experience with like the S1 and stuff like that, and couple of older models like the HED 1230 I have had some experience with, and you know, the old 70s stuff. So when he said it was Cerwin-Vega NET, I was like, holy shit, man. His name was Klaus something, or Klaus. His mother was Danish, his father was Swedish, and he lived right outside Malmö. And I went down there because I was going to go to Gothenburg or Göteborg, and attend a music party, a music release party. And I ended up in Malmö for some freaking reason, but I'm glad I did. And we started talking. I told him that, hey, since 1985, 86, I've been a huge Cerwin-Vega fan. And he said, I'm too. He said, this is the only pair I've had, but I like them so much. He said, every now and then I take them home. So he put on some more music, and this must have been in 1991 something, because I remember the Black album from Metallica had just been released or something, or had been on the market for a year or so. And I told him, hey, can you put on the Metallica and from the Black album if you have that? And he said, I don't have it, but hold on, let me see what we have. And he didn't have it. Little to my knowledge, he called someone and said, hey, can you bring over some music? This is what I'm looking for. So after half an hour, some dude comes over and he said, hey, you want to listen to Metallica and Black Album on the speakers? I said, yeah. He said, what kind? What music? What song? I said, it doesn't matter, but one of my favorite is My Friend of Misery. So he put that in, and probably the best experience I have had listening to Metallica on any Cerwin-Vega. I tell you, it was those are rock and roll speakers with a grand audience and sound. That sound just swallows you whole. I never heard them after that. I never seen them again. I only seen them in my life in real life one time, and that was that time. So if you want to have a religious experience, absolutely the NET blew me away, and especially on the Metallica. I mean, a lot of speakers can sound a little bit stressed when you play Metallica loud. You know, if you know what I mean. But the NET, they were so relaxed. They were so laid back, and they just pounded you. Those kick drums and the snare drum. It was like I was sitting right in front of Lars Ulrich, banging those freaking drums. That was so realistic. It was crazy. So if you want to take the next step, NE10, I tell you, there's only one speaker on this list that I have never heard in my life. I've never seen it, and I doubt anyone have. I'm going to take that one last. But, just because of it, myth, we have to have it on the list, okay? The next on the list is, if you have had the most you can have in Cerwin-Vega, that you feel, okay, I've covered a lot of grounds, I want to take the next step. Okay, here's the next step for you. If you really want to go all out, you get yourself a pro audio setup. I have had plenty of pro audio setup. I have had the V series. I've had the Pro Stack series. I have had the Pro Stacks, I said. I've had the CVX series. I've had them all. I have had most of the the folded horns. The T36, the L36, the SL36, the LR36. I've had them all. So what you can do, if you want to get to the next level, get yourself 4 subs or 8 subs. I recommend 8 because that takes it over the top. 4 is like just tickling you. But if you do 4, you have 2 subs on one side and 2 subs on the other, and you match it up with a dual 15 top on top of it. And you run it that way. With active crossover, you have big PA amps powering this shit, and you start pounding. I'll tell you, it's an experience. Now, if you want to take it a step further, like I did, at one point I had 16 subs, 8 subs on one side, 8 subs on folded horns on the other side, and I had 4 tops on one side and 4 tops on the other. And they could be either dual 15s or single 15s. I tell you, you can be heard 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 blocks away. It is loud. It is freaking loud. So, if I find my old pictures that I have on, I think I have some old pictures on this old laptop that is broken. I have to get into the hard drive from my days where I was doing pro audio. Yeah, when you get that shit set up at home, You are the king of the hill, man. We're not talking about sound quality here now. This is sound quantity. This is... You better take out an extra insurance on your house, man, because it's going to shake your house to pieces. It is the experience of experiences. It is the awesomest thing you could ever freaking do. Unless you just want to go back to sound quality, there's no going back after that. I tell you, there's no going back. If you think you play loud with your SL15s and your VS150 or the D9 or AT100 or DX9, move over, midget. That's mosquito sound. If you want the pro audio shit, that's no bullshit. And I used Crown amps, I used Carver amps, I used QSC amps. I wasn't too happy with the QSC. I thought the QSC was a little bit anemic. The Carver and the Crowns were way better. But if you have really, really good power amps and you run a pro audio setups and you have space, because I tell you, if you use folded horn, you need some space. If you don't have space, go for front-loaded dual 18s or single 18 or something like that. It will do the trick too. But I tell you, if you want to take the next step and go to the next level, pro audio in your living room, man. I've been there, done that many times. I did it for many years. That's how I step things up. Now, that is, there's no going back from that. But now we're going to get to the two last models. And one of these is a twofold, okay? Like I did in the other videos. So let's go with that one. And you know what's coming now. If you have had everything hi-fi, everything pro audio, and you're ready to take the next step, what is the next step? Vega 400 and Vega 500. That's the next step, baby. That is so rare and so hard to find. But I'm sure you guys are getting tired of me telling you how wonderful they sound and how great they sound. It's audio heaven, dude. Especially when it comes to Cerwin-Vega, there's nothing better than a Vega 500. Nothing. The Vega 400 is great. It's great, but there's something else with the Vega 500. It's those two are, even though they are kind of like sisters and brothers, cousin and you know, whatever. There is, when you listen to the 400, you can hear a lot of what you hear in the 500. But the 500 has a little bit more bottom. It has a little bit more oomph. It's like, move over. They're both freaking great. Sound quality, I never heard of Cerwin-Vega. Never heard of Cerwin-Vega. That made the hair on my back stand up and the hair on my arm stand up. I got chills. Even one time I got moved to tears in my eyes because it sounded so freaking good. So if you have had all the hi-fi you can think of, and you think there's no way to go, and you have had the pro audio, you tried that, and you're like, I want to go back to sound quality, I want to go back to like being civil, but I want to do it with something that is like out of this world. Well, take a step into the next realm. Take a quantum leap into a parallel universe, because that's where you're going to find the Vega 400 and the Vega 500. And I tell you, until you hear them, you have been missing out. There is so much. The step up from everything else Cerwin-Vega up to the Vega 500 is so huge. It's, when you hear them the first time in your life, you go like, holy freaking shit! How is this possible? I mean, you tell yourself, I thought the 1215 was good. I thought the 1515 was good. And then you go like, frick, I even heard the 432R, and that gave me goosebumps everywhere, where I didn't even have here, or even couldn't get goosebumps. But you'd sit there and you listen to the 500. The 400 gave me a good experience too, don't get me wrong. But the 500, man. Right now, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I wish I could time travel back in time to experience it once again. I've been looking for those speakers for 25 freaking years. I'm willing to give an arm and a leg for those speakers. They are so good. That is your next level. That is your next level. So, unless you have had them and heard them, you haven't really heard what Cerwin-Vega is all about. Now, from there, I can only imagine the next one. I can sit there and I can daydream and I can go like, oh, it must be really freaking good. And that is the Ghost. You have heard me talk about the Ghost in some previous videos and earlier videos, both on this channel and on the other. You've seen it in the Facebook old school group. That is my next step. But I doubt I will ever get to that step. No one knows how many was made. I have heard people that was close to Gene say that 3 was made. I have heard someone say 5 was made. I heard someone say only 1 was made. But I've also heard people say, hey, there was a couple of handfuls made. So I don't know. I don't know how many's out there, and where, if the 1 that, or 2, or the 3, or the 4 that was out there, or the 5, or whatever, are they still around? Do they still exist, or have they been meeting the audio god for some freaking reason because people didn't know better? Or if there is 1 out there, who's sitting on it? That's my next step up, because I can only imagine, like I said, 12. That is fucking 12 feet long, or wide, or however you want to say it. It's out of this world. I can only imagine how that sound sound, feels, smells. Because I'm sure after all these years, because that was back in the 50s. It was made at the same time era as the Vega 500. I mean, that must be really the moment of Mother Teresa coming down and put her hands on you when it comes to audio. I mean, I've been for the last 10 years, I've been actively trying to find information. I've been trying to track down people that I think maybe can have some knowledge. Sadly, some of them are passing away one by one, so it's now hard to get back to them and say, hey, you gave me a hint. Because I've heard that there was 1 still in the Chatsworth area in California, or in that area, Simi Valley, Chatsworth, Studio City. I've heard that someone's saying there is still 1 in that area. Who in that area is sitting on 1? So, you know, I can't really say to you that it's the best sounding speaker ever from Cerwin-Vega or whatever, but the way it's made and the way people talked about it in the papers and stuff, so someone must have heard it. Someone must have seen it. There is pictures of it, for crying out loud. So that's my next step, and that should be your next step too, you know. So I think I made the video that kind of like closed the circle. Now we are all looking for something, and I'm sure I'm looking for something. I'm looking for 2 things. Even though I heard the Vega 500, I want a pair of Vega 500 again. I never had it myself. I've had the pleasure of having friends or people I knew that was willing to invite me over to stay there for a day or 2 or 3 or a weekend and have fun listening to those speakers. I really want the Vega 500 or the 400. I take them both, and but I really am stressing towards the point of finding. I'm trying every day, every freaking day. I'm sitting here looking at the internet every freaking day, trying to find information about the Ghost, trying to see if I can track down someone who has it. That and the Vega 500. So I guess we all have something to stretch for. We all have something to reach for. But it's always a journey, and it's the fun of it that should drive you, because that's what drives me. The experiences and the fun of it. So now you know. I hope this list was something you should look at and try to achieve, because you will be pleasantly surprised. And you will have a smile on your face when you hear them. Until next time, take care.